All right, guys, so a short story time. So, when I was going to school in Naples, every once in a while, some kid would move to our school from New York. And these were like little wimpy kids like this. And their dad always told them that they had to find the biggest, baddest kid in the school and fight him to prove that they were tough. Because apparently that's the way these kids are brought up in New York. But in Florida, that's not how it goes. So unfortunately, these kids would never really last that long because, well, I guess getting beat up by a kid that was already getting bullied was probably the worst thing that could ever happen to you. So we're talking fourth grade. This kid's name was Michael, I believe. I can't remember. But he had just moved from New York, Long Island. And it's just this little skinny kid and a little Italian looking kid. Not a chance in the world. It wasn't possible. But again, every time these kids, it was actually a huge problem for me actually, because every time a new kid moved to our school and they came from New York, they would try to find out who the baddest kid in school was, and you had to fight them. And these kids literally stood no chance, and everybody in school thought that I was a bully picking on these kids. But these kids were actually the ones looking for me because their daddy told them that they had to find the biggest, baddest kid in school. So we're in the fourth grade, and luckily this kid was in my fourth grade class with a teacher called Miss Greenlee. Great teacher. I think we lost her to cancer, but Miss Greenlee was a great teacher. I might be wrong on that. In that classroom were actually a few notable kids. Quinn Thornton, who great football player, very loved kid, one of the few African Americans that grew up in Naples. Me and him were really close friends. I don't know where he's at currently, but great kid for sure. And there's this girl called, there was actually a few very important kids in that classroom. There was also Casey Lisak, which was a white girl. Her brother got hit by a vehicle on US 41, I believe, her older brother. So that was kind of tragic. And Casey Lisak lived about a mile from me, and we rode the same bus. And I've always had an affliction for white girls, so that says it all. But, this kid Michael had tried fighting me 3 or 4 times already, and because he was in Miss Greenlee's class, the teacher was aware that he had been trying to fight me because he told me that his daddy told him he had to fight the biggest, baddest kid at the time, and that was me. Probably there was another kid who could fight better, but he didn't really have a bad reputation. There's this kid called Lucas. I think he was from Hawaii. And this is in Naples, Naples Park Elementary School, fourth grade. But Lucas wasn't really a bad kid. He was probably a better fighter, very athletic, but because he was Hawaiian, but he probably wasn't a good fighter. Well, anyways, it came down to this kid would try to fight me, and he tried doing it in class, and he hit me once, twice, 3 times, and I had just told him, get back, get away, don't want to fight. But he had already hit me 3 or 4 times, and I looked at Miss Greenlee. Now, I had already had like 3 or 4 kids who had done this. So that year, like 3 kids had moved down from New York, and these kids never stayed in Naples. These were kids that were there for 1 year, and it just didn't work out for them, and the parents moved them somewhere else or something. We never saw these kids again. They were not, I think Don might have been there as well. Don Marchant. So these were kids that were like day ones in Naples practically. Like kids that like went from kindergarten all the way to high school in Naples. So it's like the kids that just everybody knew because they were from Naples. There was like a few kids in that classroom that were like day ones in Naples basically. I'm not sure if Don was there, but anyways, that was a group of kids that was there. And so this kid Michael really wanted to fight me, and he had hit me once, twice, 3 times, and I look at Miss Greenlee, and me and Miss Greenlee had already got in trouble with her because basically this had already happened before. I look at her, and she's just nodded her head. Now this kid was in no way, shape, or form. I had been failed like 3 or 4 times already, so I was like 3 or 4 years older than him probably, and probably twice his weight. So he actually started swinging at me, and now he was hitting me, and it made no difference. Now keep in mind that I was in my neighborhood having to deal with bullies that were 3 to 4 years older than me, so this little skinny kid couldn't. Well, he goes and he actually starts trying to fight me in fourth grade, Ms. Grinley's class. He's swinging at me, and I'm moving back, and I see him standing over Casey Lesak's desk. Behind him was a bookshelf. It was one of those mobile home classrooms. If you went to Naples, you know what I'm talking about. That's a Florida thing. You end up in a mobile home classroom. Horrible thing. The most horrible thing that can happen to you is being stuck in a mobile home classroom, because even if it rains, you had to get rained on to get lunch. It was horrible. He stood in front of Casey Lesak's desk. And I, as a young kid who liked her, wanted to impress her, decided to straight karate chop this kid with my leg. He goes over her desk flips over him. He does another flip, hits his head on the bookshelf, and all of the wall, the whole back wall was all bookshelves, and every shelf collapsed, burying this kid under all the books. And it was like just a dominoes effect. All these, just like the whole wall fell. Books everywhere, all the shelves on the ground. A few other kids got hit by falling shelves. And Casey Lesak is sitting there in her chair with her desk completely gone, tangled with this kid. And after that day, we never saw Michael again. So his dad's attempt at getting him to fight the biggest, baddest kid in school didn't go very well. In fact, it went so wrong that we never saw him again. And I was already, so every year, this would, like in the first 2 or 3 months of the year, I already instantly, as soon as the school year started, I always had this problem of kids, you know, in New York, you have to find the biggest, baddest kid, you know? And so, you know, stupid little daddies telling their kids they have to fight in school to prove themselves, and that's not how it works. Because kids that fought had to fight constantly. I mean, if you fought one person, then they fought somebody else, and you were being ranked, and literally there was like, you just did not want to get into being ranked, because then somebody else would always challenge you. It was a never-ending cycle. So you couldn't just fight one person and that was it. You would have to keep going to the ranks of people. It was never ending. So by like the first few months of school, I had already like been on, okay, if you get another fight, you're getting expelled, or you're going to some alternative program. And I'm trying to hang out with some like rich white girls, you know, because I'm living over here in a trailer park. I'm going to school in Naples where it's all rich kids. And I wanted to be in class with some rich white girls, you know, hanging out with some rich kids. So I didn't want to, I could be hanging out with a bunch of rich kids, or I could be in an alternative program. It was pretty clear that you did not want to be in an alternative program, but you could have been in North Naples Middle School or something, or North Naples High School or the crap. But, you know, you didn't want to do that. And Michael was like my final opportunity to get off on somebody and not have to pay the price. I didn't get in trouble because I had warned him. And actually, it's weird because I had actually talked to the principal earlier, like a month before that. I had talked to the principal, and they told me, hey, look, when this happens, you just tell them, don't want to do it. Don't, at least 3 or 4 times. The principal told me, let him get in a few hits first. The principal basically told me how to handle these kids that wanted to fight me, because it had been like that year. There had already been 2 other kids who had come in and immediately wanted to fight me. You know, and the principal had schooled me on, you know, the process, and having Miss Greenlee there watch this was great, because, you know, she gave me the heads up, like, okay, now you got to handle this. And of course, none of the kids liked these kids that came. They were just weird. They were never like, they were so, some of these kids were so wealthy that they were outcasts. They were so socially awkward because they lived with chauffeurs. And there was this kid, I'm not going to say his last name, but his first name was Tony. I never picked on him, never bullied him, but man, this kid had it worse than anybody ever. And he was there from like elementary school to high school. But this kid was so wealthy that he just couldn't fit in. The type of kid that has chauffeurs and stuff like that, you know, like just the amount of money that the kid couldn't be normal. He just couldn't be normal. He was always weird. He was always an outcast because the money and background he came from was so elevated that they were just awkward. Like, just so much money. Now, I wasn't a bully. I never picked on Tony. And again, I'm not going to say his last name, but I never picked on him. I think he was British. I never picked on him. I never defended him, but I never picked on him. And I never treated him bad. And a lot of the rich kids bullied him. You know, they were rich, but they weren't wealthy. He was wealthy. Anyways, they picked on this kid and treated him bad. One time he had a very embarrassing scenario. It's just the type of kid that was just always getting bullied. A lot of kids would hit him, but I never had a problem with him. I wouldn't pick on him. I treated him with respect. Well, I knew he was weird, but I never bought, and I didn't understand why he was weird. Had I known, if I had known now that this kid was this wealthy, because they sent him to school wearing regular stuff, but something just didn't click right. If I had known back then that this kid was this wealthy, I would have been his best friend. Made sure nobody messed with him. But, you know, looking back, versus little kids. Well, this kid, I seen him in Naples one day in an orange Ferrari or something with two girls, like, going crazy over him. And I was like, oh, that's why he was so weird. The reason he was so weird is because he just had so much money. Now that I think about his last name, it all makes sense now. And it was like, oh, he was that kind of wealthy. I didn't know that was why he was weird. But anyways, it was interesting to see him years later in a Lamborghini with like two model chicks like trying to run up on him. And he was just like, get away from me, vomits, you know. But it's weird how like how things turn out. And then there's other kids that were supposed to be cool. They rap, they were rappers, man. They got a studio and they got money. And then one day you see them on a drive-thru in Burger King at 3 in the morning, you're like, crap happened to you, type thing, like that 50 Cent song, right? So that wasn't the first Michael. It was the first Michael. There was a second Michael. Second Michael, same exact scenario. Now we are in North Naples Middle School. Now, North Naples Middle School, we were actually pretty cool at that point. Like, there weren't really tensions. The rich kids that we went to school with were actually pretty cool kids. Like, there was another girl, I can't remember her name, Kayla, I think it was. She lived by the beach she lived in a high-rise penthouse by the beach type scenario. So it's just crazy money type kids that we went to school with. Kids that lived in buildings on the water type stuff. Naples, at all places, so like, yeah. So all these cool kids, it's like 7th grade. Oak Ridge was a nightmare. There wouldn't be enough time on today's video to tell you how many people I had to fight in Oak Ridge. But they built North Naples Middle School, and we were the first class to go there. And this was actually legendary stuff because we used to wear white t-shirts back then, me and my friends, and because we had come from Kentucky, and it was already a thing in Kentucky, but it wasn't a thing in Florida. And we all wore white tees to school on the same day, about 50 of us. And they brought in the gang unit and classified us as 7th graders. So that year, we were just buck wild. We were like, it was wild. We got classified that year, which is not exactly good, but the rich kids were actually pretty cool. Our bus route was pretty cool, and it was the same bus route with the same kids that we had already been in bus routes before. So it was perfect. It was like the perfect year for us, 7th grade. But I had already had a few fights. Can't remember what they were. I was always in trouble. It was just, my school record is like this thick. So anyways, another Michael comes from New York. Now, I had already gotten in trouble, so I couldn't risk like the third time getting sent, to our alternative program or whatever if you do it the third time. And again, this was like the first, white kids were cool, rich kids, everybody was just legit. We had a few kids from Miami. It was popping off. It was like, all the bad kids were like all in the Golden Gate Estates. And by the way, I had great friends there as well. But because when I was in Oak Ridge, it was like all the rednecks from the Golden Gate Estates were there. So we ended up like, the rednecks would fight more than anybody I've ever seen. It was just these kids were bad. These little redneck Florida kids were bad. So when we got rid of the rednecks, and I was part of the rednecks. I was friends with the rednecks in the redneck school. Go figure. Who knew? When we got rid of Oak Ridge, we got moved into this new school. It was in North Naples, so it was just us, like 2 or 3 ghettos, like RC, TC, AV, and then of course Gargulio, so Tomatoes. So it was like 4 hoods, and everybody else was nothing but rich white kids that lived in North Naples. These kids were actually pretty legitly cool kids. They didn't fight. They were just trying to go to school. They were really like model citizen type kids. Like you would want to go to school with these kids. So we weren't trying to mess this crap up, we were not trying to mess this up. We were in a good school for rich white kids. Wasn't looking for trouble, but trouble came looking for us. So this kid, Michael, comes, and I had already got in trouble with the white tees. They had classified us as members. We were already like on thin ice. I'm talking like they actually brought cops from others. They brought more cops to our school because of us. So we were on really, really thin ice. It was bad because of the cops, but it was great because it was like, imagine like you're already in middle school. Everybody there is from your neighborhood. The same kids you went to the school bus route with. Like, it was legitly straight, man. So this new kid comes from New York, another Michael, skinny as crap, Italian little kid. Same scenario. He wants to fight with me. And again, my daddy told me that I gotta fight the biggest, baddest kid in school. So me and you are gonna have to do this at some point. And I'm like, bro, you just don't want to do this. I'm like, so my homie Jigsaw, which I don't know where he's at, but he was probably worse than me. Not as big as me. Jigsaw was like, yo, like, this kid's actually more in your league. You, like, fight him first, and then you can fight me. And, because it wasn't just like you could just fight me. You got to fight Jigsaw first, because it would have just been, it was like the fair thing to do because Jigsaw was smaller than me. He didn't want to do it. And there was one other white kid that was ghetto. There was a kid from Columbus, Ohio, who was kind of ghetto, but he was white. He was like probably the only poor white kid in the whole school. Not sure how he ended up in North Naples, but he was there. This kid wanted to fight me. He wanted to fight me. And one day we're by the hallway, and this is already in a school where the cops don't like me, the principals don't like me. They're all wanting to get rid of me because they thought that I was the mastermind behind the whole white tees thing. And I'm not going to say I wasn't, but it wasn't fair. Yeah, I might have been. But anyways, they knew that it was me just because the reputation I had was a kid was a horrendous kid. Well, I'm in the hallway in this brand new school. We were the first class there. There was hallways. This school was just bad. I mean, you had the classrooms had hallways on the outsides. And then you had parks around that. And then in the middle, you had hallways with lockers. And then you had water fountains. This school was just awesome. Brand new school. You had basketball courts right in the middle. It was just the sweetest. We had a giant courtyard in the middle. So when you're walking between your classes, you can go out in the courtyard and see all your other friends. It was legitly like you did not want to not. This was the school you wanted to be at. It was awesome. I didn't want to do it, but he pulled a scene in the hallway, and my friend Jigsaw had we had those math books that were like this. And Jigsaw grabbed both of those math books, and it was just like a flop. It was like, he was drinking water. He came up to me and like threw water at me from the fountain, and Jigsaw grabbed 2 of those books over his head and just went whack. And this kid was out cold. Now, they had cameras in the school. I didn't do anything. I got in trouble, even though it was Jigsaw who actually took the kid out. And again, after that happened, You would never see these kids again. It's like their daddy would tell them that they had to fight the biggest kid in school so they could prove that they were bad. And then they come home with like, serious injuries, and their dad's like, yep, we're moving back to New York. This isn't going to work for you. It was Jigsaw who did it. Now, I actually got in trouble, even though I had done nothing at all, just because Jigsaw was with me when he did it. Jigsaw went away for 10 days, bro. Yeah, he went away for 10 days for that one. But 10 days in an alternative program, which I didn't want, like, who would want? You know, it was like, anyway, we got Spanish parents, and you're like, oh, I have to go to this military school for 10 days. They're like, you piece of crap. Your mom's going to tell you, every time you go to these detention programs, to tell your mom you're going to go to 10 days to a military academy because you were being bad in school. Like, your parents are not, you're going to hear your parents call you a piece of crap and everything. Like, you know what I mean? What kid wants to, that's like basically pre-prison type stuff. You know what I mean? And of course, there was always the threat that they could arrest you for assaulting somebody. And that was always a possibility, even in middle school, believe it or not. Luckily, it never happened. But anyways, growing up in Naples, there was always, every single year, a kid that would move down from New York, and his dad would make him find the biggest, baddest kid, and that big kid usually was me. And, it was like, dude, I had one more incident left before they expelled me. I wanted to make it be worthwhile. I didn't want to make it be this little skinny twig. Like, come on, like, who wants to do that? But it was one of those scenarios where, like, those parents are just so crappy when they do that, where they put their kids. Of course, he would never have another incident for the rest of his life, but a kid like myself was always having incidents, and I didn't have the possibility. And, that taught me a lot of lessons, though, because, like, later on in life, I always have run-ins with little Michaels, little white kids whose dad wants them to be tough. And I always remembered that they had nothing to lose compared to me because I was already on thin ice. And it was actually a great lesson for me because later on in life, I learned a lot from it. I learned that just because somebody else, some little rich kid wants to, prove that he's bad and he's trying to fight you because he thinks he's bad, my daddy's not a cop. My daddy's not a lawyer. My daddy can't come to school and explain to the teachers what happened. No, you're a delinquent. You're gonna go to, you're gonna get punished. And while it was a horrendous thing at the time, I look back on it now as a great learning experience. That sometimes, another person may be willing to throw their life or do something crazy to try to prove that they're bad just to prove it. But if you're on thin ice or you have a different circumstances, you may not have as many lives as they do. You're not on the cat with 9 lives. You're on your last, you're on your last little leg there. So it probably isn't good for you to be out there making trouble. But I never really liked bullies. And now that I think back on it, there was a girl, and this one got me 10 days in an enhanced assist, which is horrendous crap. Now, this was in 9th grade. There's this little girl. She wasn't hot or anything. I didn't like her or anything like that. But she was getting picked on by this girl called Daisy, who was, like, really popular. So I don't know why this girl was picking on her, but this Daisy girl kept picking on this girl, and I got tired of seeing it. I don't know why this popular girl was just picking on this little girl, but the girl must have had like a mental impairment or something because, crap, I went to enhanced assist for 10 days for her and she never thanked me for it. So I realized maybe the girl was a little slow or something because I should have been her hero for what I went through for her. But this little girl was getting picked on. I don't remember her name. She had black hair, kind of short, kind of like real white complexion, solid black hair, usually wore black. Just like a loner, she would sit there by herself and this girl would come and pick on her. Now, I couldn't beat up a girl, but I told her, I said, hey, leave that girl alone. Because when I would get out of one of my classrooms, I think it was Spanish. When I leave Spanish, this was in Gulf Coast High School. I leave my Spanish class, she would hang out there. So by the time I got out of Spanish class, she would always be sitting there. It was just a thing where I was always bumping into the scenario where this Daisy girl, for I don't know what reason, just kept picking on this girl. And I never liked bullies. And because she was popular, probably nobody told her anything, but I got tired of seeing it. I told her, I said, hey, you need to leave this girl alone. And she's like, you want me to start a problem with you? I was like, bring it on. Bring me a guy and we'll handle it, you know? But she actually created a flash mob. Now, in this flash mob, she brings like 50 kids. Because a little powerful little agent there at the time, she grabbed 50 of the most popular Spanish kids. And at this time, you know, we're back with the same district of, you know, Golden Gate State. So now we have like hundreds of Spanish kids, Colombians, Cubans, Bolivians. Most of those Spanish kids are rich kids, by the way. They were living in the States, so their parents had money. But, you know, Golden Gate Estates back then when I was in Oak Ridge was all rednecks, but now the rednecks probably were less. And way more Spanish kids, like Colombians, all Bolivians, Peruvians, all that. So they bring this flash mob. And there used to be like this hallway, right? And then there was a hallway on top. So you were like in the middle of an arena with two staircases that go up each way. And we were in the middle of this thing. So we had people circling around us. And we had people on the second floor around us. And they brought 50 kids. So it was me standing in the middle of the circle with 50 kids wrapped around me. And in the middle were three of them. There's a Peruvian kid, which I never had a problem with. And he was actually listening and trying to figure out what was happening. He tried to work things. I can't remember his name for crap, but he was a Peruvian kid. There was Daisy, I think it was her name. And then there was Jay. Now, Jay was Cuban like me from Miami. And he was on probation because he got caught doing something he wasn't supposed to. Jake could not, and Jake was bigger than me, stronger than me. I had no chance. But Jay was on, I had heard, because he was bragging in the locker room, that Jay was on probation. Because he was on probation, he couldn't get in trouble. So I'm in the locker room, I'm listening to little kids talk, and they're, oh, you know, Jay's on probation, so he can't get in trouble. So I knew Jay couldn't do anything because he was on probation. So I know there's cameras on top too. There's cameras all on this whole thing is full of cameras. So whenever something happens, it'd be on camera. Now, of course, the school staff knew that Jay was on probation. So I go like this, like, hey, I'm leaning back with my hands behind me, like putting my face in his face. Come on. Go for it. Now, all those kids that were watching would have assumed that I was taunting him because I knew he couldn't do anything because he was on probation. But all those kids that were watching assumed that I literally was not afraid of Jay, which was like the most monstrous kid in that school. And it was really because I knew he couldn't do anything. So I took advantage of that and ran with it. And, you know, at first I was just talking to them like, hey, you know, I'll take on the whole mob. I don't give a crap. I really did not give a crap at that point. There's 50 kids flash mobbing me. So I said, who's the biggest one? Whoever you guys want to throw at me. They put Jay in the middle because he already had a reputation of being big. They throw Jay in the middle, of course. And this other Peruvian kid, which is more like a mediator. I was just like, hey, you know, she's picking on this little girl. She needs to leave her alone. Why is she picking on this girl? Of course, they didn't want to hear that. Daisy lied to them and told them that I was picking on her. Go figure, right? She lied to them, and now this whole flash mob of people are defending their little princess when they had no idea that really I was just defending a little girl that was getting bullied. Okay. Nothing happened because the person that they threw in the middle couldn't do anything because he was on probation. The bell rings and the whole entire school was late to class. And I stood there with my hands like this, like, come on. If you're going to do something, do it. And I knew he wasn't going to do it. I knew he wasn't going to do it. But, you know, since and then, you know, they gave me 10 days in enhanced assist for disrupting the school. Usually it's disrupting class, but I disrupted the school. I made every kid in the entire school late, allegedly. And what's crazy is I wasn't the agitator. I was just standing up for a girl that was getting bullied. I did 10 days in enhanced assist for standing up for a little girl that I didn't know, didn't like. I just couldn't stand watching her get bullied. Literally, that 10-day enhanced assist meant that the next time I got in trouble, I was going to get expelled from high school. And I did get expelled from high school. I was expelled from Gulf Coast High School by a teacher named Julie Sprague, who was possibly one of the worst teachers I've ever seen. But Julie Sprague set me up. It was a setup. They wanted to get rid of me. They were trying to get rid of me. And Julie Sprague lied. And there was 25 kids in that classroom who know what happened. Julie Sprague, there was also the kid there was another kid I beat up, yeah. Forgot that. But Julie Sprague, after that incident, I go to enhanced assist for 10 days. And I'm in ninth grade. I'm like, I feel disappointed. I'm supposed to be getting I'm in high school now. I'm really trying to take this serious. Enhanced assist, 10 days. Come back. And the girl knew that I went in trouble I told him, hey, I found her, right, where she hung out. I'm like, hey, I went to an enhanced assist for 10 days, for standing up for you. And she was like, oh, okay. I was like, oh, that's it? Well, you're welcome. I didn't like her. I just wanted to thank you. Not even that. Anyways, after that, there was a redneck. At this point, there were very few rednecks, but the redneck kids they really hated the Spanish kids. So they were picking on Spanish. The rednecks were going around picking on Spanish kids, and the people at the cops and the teachers were already, friends and family with them. So they were just not knocking us all out. I mean, there was a black kid called Antoine. When I say there's black kids, I mean because there were so little black kids in our school that you can mention them. And Antoine got expelled. There was another black girl. She did nothing. I mean, this black girl was not bad at all, and she got expelled. So there were Spanish and especially black kids were just getting expelled left to right. It was just like all the black kids were getting expelled. It was just boom, boom, boom. They were expelling all the black kids out of that school, and mostly all the black kids were getting expelled. And of course, a lot of the Spanish kids were getting expelled. It was like they were just setting them all up. The teachers were getting them all expelled. I would love to be able to go back, and I don't know how I can do this. I'm gonna try to figure this out with a lawyer maybe, to go back and see that year that I went to Gulf Coast High School, what the demographics were for the kids. Because I remember one day, I'm talking, there was like 5 black kids in the whole school. And I remember when I went to enhanced assist, 3 of them were there. Antoine, the black girl, another black girl there. And we knew the black girl wasn't bad. So I was like, what are you doing? She's like, I got 10 days in enhanced assist. I'm like, for what? She's like, I didn't do anything. The teacher, they were just knocking us out, man. Black kids, boom. They were just expelling everybody that was black, Hispanic, boom, boom, out. And they were using kids to set us up. So this redneck kid, don't remember his name. Last name was Green. His last name was Green. I used to sell bubble gum because my mom had cancer. I'm not going to get into that. It's just too depressing. But I used to sell bubble gum. And he took bubble gum from me. He's like, I'm not going to pay you. And I told him, nah, bro, this is my lunch money. It's going to happen. I'm not going to give you the details of what I did to this kid, but it was horrendous. Now, everybody thought I was a bully because I caught him off guard, but he knew what he did, and the kids in that classroom knew what he did. Of course, none of those kids mattered because none of them were relevant, but I did something horrendous to that kid. Grabbed him by the neck, grabbed him by the chain, took his chain and his cell phone. And I thought he was going to try to fight because he was acting tough. But when I did that, he starts to cry. And then all these kids in the hall were like, you're a jerk. And you know what really hurt me? Is that there was this girl that I used to like. I'm not going to say her name. You ever have that one person you really like? She was just coming out of another classroom. And she was right behind me. She saw me grab this kid, take his chain, take his phone, push him against the wall. And when I look back, she was right behind me. And it just broke my heart because, she didn't know the context of the kid had taken money from me, they wasn't paying me, and the kid was making fun of me. And it really, like if I'm selling bubblegum in school and people, I would give kids credit. Like they would pay me whenever they had the money. I couldn't afford people to think that they could just take my bubblegum. And it was bubblegum. And in fact, so I go through doing that to that kid. I look behind me, and that girl that I like was right there. She was just shaking her head like, I can't believe you. Like, and I could tell that she liked me, and it was like over at that point because she saw me do that. I went and I knew what was about to happen. I mean, I'm talking, you could hear dogs barking, you could hear cops coming, you could hear radios going off. They were going to come track me down. So what I did is I actually went to the office. And there's this white lady at the office. Can't remember her name, but she was really cool. So I ran into the office. So all the cops that they were dying to get their hands on me. All the cops, and luckily the cop that had wanted me out, like on the first day of high school, this cop told me, I'm going to ruin your life. First day in high school, told me, hey, you don't even come back to high school because we're going to ruin your life. So this was like, they were purposely they knew the kids they didn't want there based on the neighborhoods we lived in. And they told us, don't even come back to school because I'm going to arrest you at one point. I promise you I'm going to arrest you. First day in high school, right? Because those cops in middle school already told the high school cops. So the first day, our welcoming to Gulf Coast High School was a cop telling us that, I promise you I'm going to arrest you. So I went to the office. As I'm running into the office, the cops are running the other way looking for me. There's this lady at the office, and she's like, what happened? I said, look, I knew that only the parents can press charges. So I told her, find me Mr. Green's parents' phone number. So this teacher, look at how this teacher saved me, bro. I don't know who this teacher was, but this teacher, I think she was like Puerto Rican or Cuban or white. I can't remember. She was just really cool. This teacher let me look through the directory of parents, found the kid's phone number, and I called the kid's parents. I said, hey, Mr. Green, your kid, I hit your kid, right? Here's what I told the guy, right? Mr. Green, I'm another student here at Gulf Coast High School. I hit your kid, but it was the wrong kid. It was somebody else who did something bad, and we thought it was him, but it wasn't him. I'm so sorry. I told him my mom's got cancer, this and that. I said, please don't press charges. I'm not going to hurt your son. It was a misunderstanding. It was the wrong kid, this and that. And the guy agreed not to press charges. Hang up on him, so I know I'm good. Cops come, find me. They look through my book bag, and they find that I had like all this bubble gum, that in my book bag. And you're like, you're selling bubble gum in school. And I told the cop, look at what a piece of crap cop this guy was. Luckily, this cop was from another school because the cop from our school was going to a training program in Immokalee, and he was in Immokalee. The cop that wanted me was in Immokalee. So this was like an alternative cop, wasn't the one from our school, it was another cop that was substituting for him. So I got lucky that the cop that wanted me wasn't there. I told this cop, I said, hey man, look, my mom's got cancer. I got all this bubble gum because I sell it to make my lunch money every single day. It's a really tough spot. The cop told me if I catch you selling bubble gum again, I'm going to expel you. And I was like, dude, this is how I pay my lunch money every single day. He's like, I don't care, starve. I'm like, dude, I'm literally paying my lunch every single day. I'm paying my lunch because I sell bubble gum. Like, that's how bad I wanted to go to school. I wanted to go to school so bad, right? I wanted to go to school so bad that I was selling bubble gum to pay for my lunch money. That's how bad I wanted to go to school. They had programs where kids could get lunch money, but the problem was that in high school, they sell you the food from a food court. So it wasn't like there was a program. Like in middle school, there's a program where you can get food. In high school, you couldn't get a program. But it ended with that kid gave me another 10 days of enhanced assist. I came back. The cop wasn't there for that time period, so they couldn't expel me. And then that cop, I came back and that cop grabbed me by the shirt. It's like, oh, you got so lucky that I wasn't here that day. Because the cop, he's like, but I'm going to get you. I promise you I'm going to get you. And he set me up with Julie Sprague. Julie Sprague made a false report about a cell phone. And I had a cell phone because I was working after school. So I was going to high school and I was running a landscaping company in the 9th grade. You have to be 21 years old in Florida to drive a truck with a trailer, like the way I was driving it. And I was doing that at 16 years old. 15, 16 years old, I was driving a truck that you needed a CDL for with a trailer. Because I was working and I was running a landscaping company with like 3 Mexicans that were working underneath me and going to school. I was working and going to school in the 9th grade. Julie Sprague set me up, lied, got me expelled right after the whole scenario because they couldn't expel me because the other cop did the paperwork. Well, Julie Sprague became the superintendent for Collier County. They were so happy that Julie Sprague was able to get me expelled from Gulf Coast High School that they made her the superintendent for Collier County. This is how crooked these schools in Florida are. They gave this woman a promotion because she was able, right after she got rid of me, I got kids that were sending me text messages. Look, the teacher that got you expelled, she was on the Naples Daily News because she was getting promoted to superintendent. They promoted Julie Sprague to superintendent because she got me kicked out of Gulf Coast High School. But today I probably make more money on YouTube than all those teachers make whatever they're doing for the school systems. I don't know about the superintendent job, but probably pretty close. Anyways, that's my little story about some of my troubles in high school, middle school, elementary school. A lot of these kids that ended up getting kicked out of high school, expelled, did nothing. They set us up, and it was done on purpose. I've seen a lot of kids who really weren't that bad. And then there was a little white girl who got caught with one of these. Yeah. White girl. Brought one of these to school because she was selling this. Okay. She was selling, so she had one of these. And she graduated from Gulf Coast High School because her dad was a sheriff. Did you hear what I said? Did you hear what I said? White girl in the 10th grade brought one of these to school because she was selling this in school. Her daddy came in with his sheriff uniform and talked his little daughter out of it, and she graduated. White girl brought one of these to school, got 10 days in enhanced assist, graduated from Gulf Coast High School. Me, got expelled from Gulf Coast High School for bringing a cell phone because I was working so I could go to school. The United States of America, where a Hispanic kid gets expelled from a school for having a cell phone while a white girl brings one of these to school and she got out of it. She graduated from Gulf Coast High School even though she brought one of these to school. I got expelled for a cell phone.